In the shadow of Egypt's mighty pyramids, beyond the sounds of the Nile, there was a kingdom, powerful, proud, and forgotten by many. This is the story of the Kingdom of Kush, Africa's silent lion, Egypt's greatest rival, and a civilization that rose, fell, and rose again, until it shook the world. Welcome to Niger Trends TV, where history comes alive. Hit that subscribe button, grab your drink, and let's travel back thousands of years, to a kingdom carved in gold, blood, and destiny. Our story begins in a land called Nubia, located in what is now modern-day Sudan. Think of Nubia as the neighborhood next door to ancient Egypt. Close, rich, and watching everything Egypt did. Now, imagine this. If Egypt was like a firstborn prince raised in a palace, Nubia, later called Kush, was the younger brother. Quiet at first, but strong, determined, and ready to prove himself. Kush started small, just farming near the Nile, trading with neighbors, and building communities. But soon, they discovered something that would change their destiny forever. Gold. And not just a little. Kush had mines filled with gold, iron, ivory, and incense. This land wasn't just beautiful, it was valuable. And Egypt took notice. Imagine living next to a loud, powerful neighbor, one who takes what they want and expects you to follow their rules. That was the relationship between Egypt and Kush for a long time. Egypt saw the land of Kush as a treasure chest. They invaded it, occupied it, and turned it into a sort of colony. Temples were built in Egyptian style. Pharaohs sent governors to control the region. Kushite children were taught Egyptian religion, language, and culture. And let's not forget the gold. Kush had gold mines, lots of them. Egypt used that gold to decorate their temples, bury their kings in luxury, and fund their powerful armies. But here's the surprising part. Kush didn't disappear under Egypt's control. Instead of breaking, they observed, absorbed, and adapted. They learned how Egypt worked, from the way they organized their government to how they built their temples and wrote in hieroglyphics. They studied the Egyptian gods, but quietly began mixing in their own beliefs. They didn't just copy. They grew. It's like when the younger sibling watches the older one closely, learns all their moves, and then starts creating a new style that's even better, because it combines wisdom with originality. While Egypt was looking down on Kush, Kush was quietly leveling up. Then came Egypt's downfall. The once great kingdom began to crack, civil wars, weak pharaohs, and greedy officials. Their power faded like a dying flame. And Kush? They were ready. For centuries, they had been the student. Now, it was time to become the master. In the city of Napata, a Kushite king named Meroë rose to power. He wasn't just any king. He was bold, smart, and ambitious. He believed he had the right, not just to rule Kush, but to rule Egypt too. And guess what? He did it. In a shocking move, Meroë led his army north, into Egypt, and conquered it. He didn't destroy Egypt. No. He respected it, restored temples, honored gods, and even wrote a victory poem bragging about how he defeated his enemies with both strength and mercy. This was the beginning of the 25th dynasty of Egypt, a line of black pharaohs from Kush. Let that sink in for a moment. Kush, the land that once served Egypt, was now ruling over it. The 25th dynasty was one of pride, power, and unity. These black pharaohs, Meroë, Shabaka, Taharqa, and Tantamani, were not only strong leaders, they were builders, reformers, and warriors. Let's talk about Taharqa, the most famous of them all. He expanded temples, protected Egypt from invading Assyrians, and tried to unite the two lands under one vision of peace and power. Under his rule, the Nile Valley was alive with culture, trade, and religion. He was celebrated in both Egypt and Kush. But the glory couldn't last forever. The Assyrians were like a storm on the horizon, or powerful, fast, and ruthless. They invaded Egypt, and despite Kushite bravery, they forced the Black Pharaohs to retreat back south, to Kush. But even in retreat, Kush didn't disappear. They built a new capital, called Meroë, and this is where Kush would shine in a brand new way. If Napata was the heart of old Kush, Meroë was its soul reborn. This city was ahead of its time, like an African Manhattan in the desert. It had grand palaces, libraries, pyramids, and a booming iron industry. In fact, Meroë was called the Birmingham of Africa by modern historians because of how advanced its ironworking was. They had their own writing system, unique art styles, powerful queens called Candakes, or Candaces, and trade routes stretching all the way to India and Rome. Let me pause and ask you something. Did your history teacher ever tell you Africa had queens who commanded armies and ruled empires? Probably not. But Kush did. These Candakes were fierce, wise, and respected. In fact, one of them even stood up to Rome. When the Roman Empire took over Egypt, they expected to rule Nubia too. But Queen Amenirinas, a Candake of Kush, had a different idea. In 24 BC, she led her army, archers, cavalry, and warriors, into Egypt and attacked Roman forts. She wasn't playing games. This queen lost one eye in battle, and kept fighting. Rome was shocked. They weren't used to this kind of resistance. And after years of back and forth, they made peace. A peace treaty, on Kush's terms. That's right. Rome backed off. Kush kept its land, its pride, and its independence. Like all great empires, from Rome to Babylon, from Mali to Greece, the Kingdom of Kush eventually saw its light begin to dim. But it wasn't because they grew weak overnight. No, this was the slow work of changing times. You see, by the 4th century AD, the world had started to shift. New trade routes were being built along the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. Old roads that once carried Kushite gold and iron were now quiet. The flow of wealth? It started moving elsewhere. Neighboring tribes and rising kingdoms became stronger. Kush faced attacks, isolation, and pressure from growing Christian kingdoms to the south and east. And eventually, the great city of Meroë was abandoned. Its pyramids stood alone, silent witnesses to centuries of glory. But here's what's important. Kush didn't vanish. It transformed. Its culture, its stories, its strength, they lived on through oral traditions, in the bloodlines of African people, and even in the architecture of African royalty centuries later. Today, we can still see Kush's legacy. In the more than 200 pyramids still standing in Meroë, more than in all of Egypt. In the powerful stories of queens like Amenirinas, who stood toe-to-toe with Rome. In the evidence of advanced iron smelting, long before Europe had its industrial revolution. And in the truth that African civilizations were not behind, they were thriving, leading, and building long before colonizers ever stepped foot on the continent. Kush reminds us that African history is not just about struggle. It's about empire. It's about innovation. It's about dignity and legacy. So when you walk through a museum, or hear stories of ancient kings and queens, remember, Africa was always in the story. Not in the background, but at the center. So next time someone mentions ancient empires, remember the Kingdom of Kush. Not just Egypt's rival, but a civilization of royalty, resistance, and brilliance. If you enjoyed this journey, hit the like button, subscribe to Niger Trends TV, and share this video with someone who needs to know that Africa's history is more than slavery, it's empires, warriors, kings, and queens. Drop a comment below. Which part of the Kushite story inspired you the most? Until next time, keep learning, keep rising. This is Niger Trends TV.